Yo, 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 what's up, guys? This is Chris, aka Wonder K Tino, back with another episode Talks. It's been a while, but we're back. And in this video, I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to become a better animator. And a disclaimer, this is just my opinion. I don't claim to be the greatest animator of all time. So don't take this advice personal. It's just my opinion. So step number one is concept drawing. Drawing characters, but also just drawing better in general. I do believe when it comes down to animation, there is, basically like 90% of the animation is drawing skills. It's how good of an artist that you are. If you're drawing things or people or buildings or objects that are uncomprehensible, it doesn't matter how good of a story you have. If the art isn't arting, if the art isn't popping, then basically you can just throw away the whole animation. I'm be real. You can just throw the whole animation away. However, with the practice of drawing skills, you will start to develop your own style. And with that own style, it's not to say that, you're making things not comprehensible. It's comprehensible, but I can tell that this individual, style is this, or their style leans to more of that, or their aesthetic is a little bit more bizarre than normal. But it's still comprehensible. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that looks like. I mean, look, if you could animate stick figures, that's still better than the most. You know what I'm saying? So it's basic drawing skills. Get better at drawing. Get better at understanding the human anatomy, whether, as far as size, as far as proportions, as far as curves, as far as emphasis on other things, then that will make the animation more visual pleasing, I should say. Next step is understanding frames. Now, frames are where, like frame of movement. So it's not just him taking a step, but it's how his movements with that step. And that's going to be more, you will have to, study frameworks to really understand that. The best frameworks outside of, animation books to learn, but the best frameworks that are out there are skateboarding sequences where, if you ever look at a skateboard magazine, well, back in the days, we used to look at skateboard magazines. They would have photos of people, frames of movement of their skateboarding tricks. So that's frames. Or if you look at old school basketball posters where Michael Jordan is going for a dunk and is showing frame for frame of his movement of the dunk. That's what frames are. It's frames of movement into a particular movement. So basically, point A to point B, it will take, let's just say, 4 frames of movement. So that's how you understand frames. That's the best way I can describe it without visually showing you. And you can also learn frames from, you can Google how to animate walking. Another good frame practice to start off with is the bouncy ball, like moving the bouncy ball from the edge of the frame, from the edge of the scene to one edge of the scene. That's another practice. But as you start to understand frames, you do not need to draw every frame of movement. Unless if you're working on like a big project, like a movie production, then you need to, because they're trying to stretch out, the film to meet at a particular time length deadline. So like they need to make a movie and it has to be an hour and a half max. So you need to draw multiple frames because there's going to be multiple cuts and all this. So the more frames, the better for their time. That's the only time that you'll need to draw like 60 frames, every time a person moves their finger. That's only for that. But when you're looking to animate on your own, or like you or another person, you don't need to draw every frame because it's going to make the animation look very, very stiff, especially, if you're self-taught and you're not really skilled in frames, because framing can get pretty complex a lot of times. It's going to make the animation look very stiff, and it's going to lose its transition and translation of movement. You don't need to draw every frame. But if you're not going to draw every frame, then you must understand how cartooning, how cartoon frames actually works. And that comes from a study you have to go back to older cartoons of how they draw out frames. New cartoons nowadays, not too much. They don't really explore a whole lot. But older cartoons, they had it in all of their stuff, like the Looney Tunes, old, Walt Disney and, Tom and Jerry. And they had where they didn't draw every frame, but every frame, it was a stretch or an exaggeration of movement to make the cartoon more cartoony, to add a little bit more humor. Or another thing too, there's a trick where it's called a blur, and that's where the movement has like a little a blur motion where it doesn't necessarily capture every single movement, but it blurs between the lines, whether you're trying to make it go super fast or you're trying to exaggerate the movement to get to skip over certain steps. So that's just a shell of understanding frames alone, but you don't need to draw every frame. It's just going to take a lot of time, especially if you're doing it with a small team or on your own. It's going to just take up a lot of time, but understand frames as well. And the last point that I'm going to make is special effects is going to be the last of your concerns. The reason why I say that is because a lot of, animations that I've seen, and I'm not talking about high production animation. I'm talking about like independent stuff. They put a lot of emphasis on special effects because they're trying to make the next Dragon Ball Z, the next Jujutsu Kaisen, more anime influence. And I'm here to tell you that's the last thing that you should worry about. When it comes down to animation, if you want people to watch your stuff and to give you good positive feedback, it has to be a coherent anime. It could be the most basic animation of all time, but if it's coherent and the story is being presented clear as it possibly can, it could be the most basic and the most first grade animation. But again, if you can make the animation, if you understand those last two steps, special effects is going to be the last thing. Special effects, you could save that for another time as your production grows and the story that you're presenting grows and it requires, special effects to make certain things cool. But special effects is just like, it's like icing, it's there to make it more pretty. But if you don't know how to bake a cake, then the icing is pretty much useless. So special effects is the last concern when it comes down to, your first steps into animation and becoming a better animator. That's for production use. And special effects, I look at it as that's where you start to get more in your directorial stage. And that comes from when you start to understand how certain scenes are better in certain sides and certain angles and the whole 360, camera. Like that's where you start to imply that, particular aspect. So And my bonus tip of becoming a better animator is just to basically challenge yourself. Challenge yourself into, if you're not good at, walking, uh, draw that. Or if you're not good at animating running, do different types of running. If you're not, good at fighting, practice on how to animate a fight scene, study fight scenes and all those things. Experiment, exaggerate movement here and there, exaggerate expression, understanding how certain characters have certain reactions based upon a character's personality. That's part of animation too, to where every character is not the same. They're all their own individuals. So, so with that, man, just continue to, just practice, man, just practice. Um, um, if you're really good at drawing Spider-Man or other people's, content that you're a fan of, challenge yourself to create your own character, and all of those things. So, yeah, just challenge yourself, continue to practice and all of those things, man. And, fun fact, man, you know, me being an animator myself, and I started out being an artist first, so I'm very strict on on the artistic aspect. But to let you know the truth, guys, it took me a long time to really draw a character from head to toe. I was good at portraits. I was good at drawing a position of a body, but I wasn't good at drawing, a proportional body. And it took a while, and it took time for me to get comfortable with my own style. And now that I have my own style, I'm comfortable with it. Because I also understand too, and you can also take notes on this. It's really not being the best animator of all time. It's understanding as you learn these steps with the concept, basic drawing skills, understanding frames. Don't really look at special effects as the end all be all. Once you understand the basic principles of animating and drawing itself, you will understand what your style is, because there's nobody that's the greatest animator of all time. Like, every cartoon and every stylistic, whether you like Nickelodeon, Disney, Cartoon Network, anime, throughout all of those different studios, every animation has their own style. And you have to figure out what your own style is as you continue to practice more. You have to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what's your strong suits, what's your weaknesses, all of those things plays a part in it. So yeah, man, so those are my tips on how to become a better animator. Anytime in between time, always remember, guys, Jesus loves you, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.